Layla Moran is a Liberal Democrat MP whose mother is Palestinian. She's recently spoken about how worried she is for relatives living in Gaza. But for GMB presenter Richard Madeley, that connection was enough to prompt this bizarre interaction.
It is not true to say that Hamas individually have killed the 2,600 Palestinians who have died. It is true to say that they have made a situation much, much worse. And there is no condoning, and I'm not about to start condoning what they've done. And it's awful. And it just needs to stop now.
With your family,
it just needs to stop
with your family connections in Gaza, did you have any indication of what was going to happen 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago? Was there any word on the street in Gaza?
Not this. I think everyone has been surprised by, first of all, partly the timing, the sophistication, the way that it's happened.
The word on the street? You think Layla Moran, the MP, she's the representative of Gaza City? Richard Madeley, she's in Oxford. She's in leafy Oxford. What a bizarre question to ask. You know who did know about what was going to happen? The Egyptians. They told the Israelis 72 hours before the strikes that something was amiss, to be careful, there could be a big security challenge in the south. I should add, the Israelis deny this, but this is something which has been said by a very senior US congressperson. And in addition to that, Netanyahu's own security chiefs told him something was brewing. This has been said repeatedly, publicly, and it wasn't really listened to. So the word was on the street, Richard. It just wasn't going towards Layla Moran. James, what did you make of this? I find Richard Madeley such an interesting character because he's just stupid enough to say the thing out loud that basically everybody else in broadcast media is thinking.
That is actually his value. And so that's one of the things I saw that there were comments circulating online saying, oh, you know, that Madeley must go, this is unacceptable. I actually think he's very useful to the left where he is. I think he's useful in that he expresses, as you say, the logic behind a lot of the comments or a lot of the lines of questioning that are taken by mainstream journalists. It does seem to me to be completely mad to allow him to handle stuff of this seriousness. I mean, this is a guy who's, as far as I can tell, the mainstay of his career was sort of, you know, funny shaped vegetables and semi-lobotomized pop stars. You know, so it's odd to see him sort of pursuing this line in person, but he's ultimately unimportant. He's very useful for us in that you can see, you know, he's absorbed the logic that's used across the rest of the press and just repeated it, as you say, in this kind of bizarre, bold-faced way. But yeah, I mean, what a bizarre and what, you know, obviously a profoundly offensive line of questioning.
There's also another sort of issue here, which is the sort of Jeremy Carlification of UK political journalism. I mean, I wouldn't qualify this as political journalism, but this is current affairs journalism, right? You're asking a politician about an event that happened 2 weeks ago and the geopolitical fallout. And I've thought about this for a long time, Jeremy Carlification, the adoption of this kind of way of talking and reporting and discussing and digesting. But then I see literally Jeremy Kyle on Talk TV doing all of these things. And it's interesting to say that you have these people from like 20 years ago from daytime TV, and now all of a sudden, and look, to be fair to them, they've not asked for it. I don't think Richard Madeley wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I want to ask the big questions about the future of West Asian security and Israel-Palestine. I'm sure he has never said that in his life, but for some reason, broadcast journalism keeps on thrusting these people to the forefront of the conversation. Something's gone really badly wrong with how we do broadcast journalism in this country, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. I mean, I think one of the things that is true actually is that most people in Richard Madeley's position think that they should be invited to pronounce or inquire about virtually everything. There's no subject that should be off limits to them. They think that their expertise knows no bounds, despite what we saw this morning. I suppose the other side of this, I think, is to say that, yes, lots of news has become infotainment. And it's not just sort of daytime presenters making the move into sort of serious news or kind of hard current affairs. It's also the sort of unfortunate habit of telling journalists that their personalities are interesting. And that, I think, is fatal to journalism. I actually don't, you know, lots of people really like the sort of, you know, I'm Emily Maitlis and here's my opinions, my feelings about these things. I don't think it's necessarily that great for journalism. You know, I think it's important to try to adopt, you know, you can be open about your commitments, you can be open about the angle from which you're approaching something. But the thing that I think is incumbent upon journalists and commentators actually is to really approach this stuff as fair-mindedly as they can, while being, open about what their commitments are. I'm not interested in jokes made by journalists. They don't tend to be very good jokes.
Yeah, I think that's so true. We saw it recently with Kay Burley on Sky. We put a clip out of that from last week. I think it's got over 300,000 views. And she was pushed back in her misreporting, frankly, of comments made by the Palestinian ambassador. And she's performing a role which is kind of obstreperous. Oh, go away, you trivial little people. But you're a journalist. You're meant to present two sides of the argument, even if you only believe one side of that argument. It's literally your job. You're there to inform people. I don't think they think that. I don't think Richard Madeley at the back of his mind says, how can I add value to my audience? How can I add value? They don't know about this. How can I tell them in an informative, entertaining, interesting way? That should be the first question of journalism. It's not.